Hi, welcome to the channel. Today's video is titled The United States Invasion of Canada, the War of 1812 to 1815. Interesting. We're going to check this video together. And yeah, in on my other channel, I've checked the British American War of 1812, which was quite interesting. And I always said I wanted to check the Canadian perspective, which I did. And this is also giving the other side between the United States and Canada. So we're going to check this together, or how Canada was affected by this. So we're going to check this together, and all of your thoughts and your contribution in the comments below. Let's dive right in.
June 18th, 1812, United States President James Madison and Congress would formally declare war on the British Empire and begin mobilizing men for their invasion of Canada. In the early 1800s, the United States would come into constant conflict with Great Britain as the British were arming Native Americans in their war against the United States in the Northwest Territories. In Europe, Great Britain was fighting in the Napoleonic Wars with France, which led to many trade restrictions on American ships from both France and Britain. The orders in
I would also love to check the Napoleonic War. I think it was stated between English and French, right? I would also love to check that because, the, say, with history, there are quite interesting things that happen, even in different regions, right? And I've heard about it, or like I've seen videos that just highlighted or talked about it, but I've not checked in-depth video about it, right?
Great Britain was fighting in the Napoleonic Wars with France, which led to many trade restrictions on American ships from both France and Britain. The orders in council particularly infuriated the Americans, along with the allegation that Britain was impressing Americans to serve on their ships. On June 1st, 1812, President James Madison would send a message to Congress recounting American grievances against Great Britain. The declaration mostly focused on Britain's orders in council, which harbored on maritime issues, especially involving British blockades. The conflict formally began on June 18th, 1812, when Madison signed the measure into law. The war had been precedented by years of diplomatic dispute, yet neither side was ready for war when it came. Britain was still heavily engaged in the Napoleonic Wars. The Royal Navy was blockading most of the coast of Europe. The number of British regulars present in Canada in July 1812 was officially just over 6,000. The United States was also not prepared for the war. Madison had assumed that the state militias would easily seize Canada and that negotiations would follow. In 1812, the regular army consisted of fewer than 12,000 men, as the service was voluntary, unpopular, and paid poorly.
American Army 12,000, British Army 6,000. Wow.
An American army commanded by William Hull invaded Upper Canada, arriving at modern-day Windsor, Ontario after crossing the Detroit River. His forces were
Oh,
composed of untrained and ill-disciplined militiamen. Hull would be forced to withdraw to the American side of the river on August 7th, 1812, after receiving news of a Shawnee ambush on his supply convoy. Meanwhile, British Major General Isaac Brock believed that he should take bold measures to calm the settler population in Canada to convince the tribes that Britain was strong. He moved near the western end of Lake Erie with reinforcements and attacked Detroit, using Fort Malden as his stronghold. Hull feared that the British possessed superior numbers. Also, Fort Detroit lacked adequate
really?
gunpowder and cannonballs to withstand a large siege. He agreed to surrender on August 16th. Brock moved to the eastern end of Lake Erie, where the Americans were attempting a second invasion. The Americans attempted to attack across the Niagara River on October 13th, but they were defeated at Queenston Heights. However, Brock was killed during the battle, and British leadership suffered after his death. After Hull surrendered Detroit, General William Henry Harrison took command of the Army of the Northwest. He set out to retake the city, which was now defended by Colonel Henry Proctor and Tecumseh. A detachment of Harrison's army was defeated at Frenchtown on January 22nd, 1813. In
Let me even say this, right? There was a video that I checked that's also that was talking about this war, the how Canada or how Canada was affected by the war, right? And talked about the Niagara Falls, right? Niagara, right? I also want to know, like, if there's a specific video addressing like the event that kind of like happened in Niagara Falls, especially with how Canada was hurt. The video I checked did justice to it, but I also want, but I think that I thought that the video itself was just like a summary of other places that were affected. Now I want specific regarding the Niagara Falls, maybe even Ontario, right? If I can find video or a video that would specifically talk about that, that would make sense. Or even if I can find books, right? I would love to read more about it. If you have link or whatever, you can share with me, because I just want to digest and also like have an idea. I don't want surface level. I want in depth. That's right.
May 1813, Procter and Tecumseh set siege to Fort Meigs in northwest Ohio, but the fort held out. The fighters eventually began to disperse, forcing Procter and Tecumseh to return to Canada, marking the end of their Ohio campaign.
Mm. Show respect to all people, but bow to none. Hmm.
On April 27, 1813, Clancy and Dearborn attacked York, the capital of Upper Canada. At the Battle of York, the outnumbered British regulars were defeated and destroyed the fort and dockyards as they retreated. The American soldiers set fire to the legislation building and looted several government buildings. On May 25, 1813, Fort Niagara and the American Lake Ontario Squadron began bombarding Fort George. An American amphibious force assaulted Fort George on the north end of the Niagara River on May 27th. It captured it without serious losses. The British abandoned Fort Erie and headed towards Burlington Heights. British position was close to collapsing in Upper Canada. However, the Americans did not pursue the retreating British forces until they had largely escaped and organized a counteroffensive at the Battle of Stony Creek on June 5th, leading to a strategic British victory, forcing the Americans to pull back rather than continue their advance into Upper Canada. General Dearborn retreated to Fort George, mistakenly believing that he was outnumbered and outgunned, marking the end of the American offensive into Upper Canada. Meanwhile, Commodore James Yeo had taken charge of the British ships on the lake and mounted a counterattack, which the Americans
This one is Commodore. This is for the British side, right? That should be, because I can see the British flag, right?
James Yeo had taken charge of the British ships on the lake and mounted a counterattack, which the Americans repulsed at the Battle of Sackett's Harbor. Thereafter, Chauncey and Yeo's squadrons fought two indecisive battles off the
Battle of Sakataba. I think I saw a video about it. Hold on.
mounted a counterattack, which the Americans repulsed at the Battle of Sackett's Harbor. Thereafter, Chauncey and Yeo's squadrons fought two indecisive battles off the Niagara on August 7th and at Burlington Bay on September 28th, neither side having gained a complete victory. Late in 1813, the Americans abandoned the Canadian territory that they occupied around Fort George. The British would capture Fort Niagara on December 18, 1813, after taking the American garrison by surprise. In the winter of 1812-1813, the Americans launched a series of raids from New York that hampered British supply up the river. On February 22nd, the Canadian local militia launched an attack on the Americans in the Battle of Ogdensburg, and the Americans were forced to retreat. The Americans made two more thrusts into Montreal in 1813.
Montreal?
Major General Wade Hampton was to march north from Lake Champlain and join a force under General James Wilkerson that would sail from Sackett's Harbor to Lake Ontario and descend the St. Lawrence. Hampton was delayed by road and supply problems. Charles de Salaberry defeated Hampton's force of 4,000 at the Chateauguay River on October 25th with a smaller force of Canadian skirmishers and Mohawks. Wilkerson's force of 8,000 set out on October 17th, but it was delayed by weather. On November 11th, his rear guard of 2,500 attacked Morrison's force of 8,000 at Crystal's Farm and was repulsed with heavy losses. with the onset of winter, retreated to the United States and settled into winter quarters.
There is no way Canada wouldn't be brutally affected or hurt by this battle. Because, yeah, let it be river, let it be land. It's still like right in their territory, like right on the in their face. There is no way Canada would not be brutally affected by this. That's why I want to check. I've seen the Canadian perspective, and also there was also another video that talked about the Canadian perspective regarding the American Civil War, as well how Canada like was affected by it as well. But regarding this one, because war, this British American War of 1812 was very significant. It played a significant role for many nations. We're talking about Britain, we're talking about Britain, we're talking about America, we're talking about Canada, we're talking about France, we're also talking about Spain. And there are some other people that we've not actually, like, even though they did not, like, maybe some of them were did not stay till the end of the war. Some of them, like, they, for the most part or for the first part of it, they kind of stayed, right? So we want to hear from those people as well, right?
The Americans were attempting a second invasion. They captured Fort Erie on July 3rd, 1814. Unaware of Fort Erie's fall or the size of the American force, the British general Riall engaged with Winfield Scott and was defeated at the Battle of Chippewa on July 5th. An
Battle of
attempt to
Chippewa.
advance further ended with the hard-fought but inconclusive Battle of Lundy's Lane on July 25th. The Americans withdrew but withstood a prolonged siege of Fort Erie. The British tried to storm Fort Erie on August 14th, but they suffered heavy losses. Eventually, they raised the siege. The end of the war with Napoleon in Europe in April 1814 meant the British could deploy their army to North America. In August, a force of 2,500 British soldiers under General
Wait, while they were at this war, they were also fighting with France, the Napoleonic War. Hey Siri, when did the Napoleonic War happen?
It happened from 1803 to 1815.
Wow. Britain. How did they do it? Thank you. How did they do it? 1802, okay, to 1815. They were at war with France. They were also at war with America. So, hold on. Let me take it back. Hey Siri, when was the Napoleonic War?
It happened from 1803 to 1815.
So 1803 to 1815, Napoleonic War started, or the Napoleonic War was already going on or happening, right? Siri, who were involved in the Napoleonic War?
Do you want me to use ChatGPT to answer that?
Search the web. And Siri said France by Napoleonic or other nations such as Spain, Portugal. Okay, Siri, at this point, I'm gonna need you to explain to me who were involved in the Napoleonic War.
Do you want me to use ChatGPT to
Yes,
answer
please.
that? Do you want me to use ChatGPT to answer that?
Yes.
The Napoleonic Wars, from 1803 to 1815, involved France under Napoleon against multiple coalitions of European powers. The main participants were France and its allies, including at various times Italy, the Confederation of the Rhine-German states, Spain before 1808, Denmark, Norway, and the Duchy of Warsaw, Britain, leading several coalitions, with allies shifting but often including Austria, Russia, Prussia, Sweden, Portugal, Spain after 1808, and later the Netherlands. The wars ended with Napoleon's defeat by the 7th Coalition at Waterloo in 1815. That was from ChatGPT. Check important info for mistakes.
Thank you. So you see, the war was like so many people were affected. While this one is the European war, Britain was also having war with America. How did they do it? Let's find out.
1814 meant the British could deploy their army to North America. In August, a force of 2,500 British soldiers under General Ross arrived in Bermuda. Together with the naval and military units already on the station, they planned to strike at the national capital. When the British landed on August 19th, the inexperienced state militia was easily routed at the Battle of Bladensburg, opening the route to Washington. British troops, led by Major General Robert Ross, attacked and captured Washington with a force of 4,500 troops. On August 24th, after the British had finished looting, Ross directed his troops to set fire to the White House and United States Capitol.
Oh, this was when they blew or they burnt the White House. I think I saw a video that also talked about this. I mean, when I see videos like this, I don't know why I just skip them. I remember seeing a video title like "The War When They Burned the White House," like specific. That was the title, right? Interesting.
After the British had finished looting, Ross directed his troops to set fire to the White House and United States Capitol. After taking some munitions from the Washington Munitions Depot, the British boarded their ships and moved on to their major target, the heavily fortified city of Baltimore. The battle for Baltimore began with the British landing on September 12, 1814 at North Point, where they were met by American militia. The battle was a stalemate, with the Americans falling back. The British planned to simultaneously attack Baltimore from the water on the following day, although the Royal Navy was unable to get past Fort McHenry at the entrance of the Baltimore harbor and unable to support an attack from the northeast by the British Army. An unsuccessful last-ditch night barrage attack on Fort McHenry was led on September 13th. The British called off the attack and sailed downriver to pick up their army, which had retreated from the east side of Baltimore. While on the Gulf Coast, Admiral Alexander Cochrane moved on the new state of Louisiana and the Mississippi Territory. The Treaty of Ghent would be signed on December 24, 1814, but before the news would reach the Americas, American forces repelled a British assault on New Orleans, and in January 1815, the British force suffered heavy casualties. On February 17, 1815, the United States Congress would ratify the treaty, officially ending the War of 1812.
This New Orleans Battle of New Orleans. I think I saw a video that I'm also gonna check. This one, I'm gonna check it.
The treaty released all prisoners and restored all captured lands and ships between the United States and Britain. Mobile and Spanish West Florida were not returned to Spain, who was allied to Britain in the War of 1812. The treaty made no changes to the...
Spain was ally. Oh, yeah. Remember the Napoleonic War, right? Wait. Spain was allied with Britain on this.
Mobile and Spanish West Florida were not returned to Spain, who was allied to Britain in the War of 1812. The treaty made no changes to the pre-war boundary on the US-Canada border. Thank you for watching our video on the War of 1812. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing. And
thank you for sharing this. Thank you for sharing this. This is mind-blowing from another level. Because let me be honest with you. I've checked the battle of the British American War of 1812, but I did not know that while they were at war with America, while Britain was at war with America, in the Battle of 1812 to 1815. They were also at war with other European countries, with Europe. That's the Napoleonic War. I did not know that. I've heard about the Napoleonic War, but my mind did not go to like search on search about the year it was the war was on for, right? Wow. Spain was allied with Britain. That's interesting. That sounds about right. That's interesting. But yeah, I love what we just gathered here, if I'm being honest myself. But again, 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 I would love to check more history, digging or diving more about this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you're Canadian or American or British, right? Or wherever, either French or Spanish or German, because this is like a collective, both the Napoleonic War and the British American War is more like, I don't know, but everything is like all together, right? So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Maybe if there are history or versions you know about that you also want to share, you can share that in the comments below. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and all that stuff. And until next time, see you in the next video.